Game on, Mr. Dash.
Game on! Welcome to episode 10 of the Straight Off the Pipe podcast. I am Dash, aka Dash in the Park. In the box beside me, we've got a guy that drinks the dirty water, and the Jays went 3 of 4 against the Red Sox. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Dursa.
Hitting me with the baseball talk on a Sunday night, are you?
Keep you guessing, buddy.
Yeah, that you're throwing at my head.
Cheers, by the
You're
way.
throwing at my head on a Sunday night. I kind of like it.
I, I throw heaters at your head every night, buddy.
I spent the day jumping into a waterfall. Not into a waterfall, into some water below a waterfall. But it's been a good Sunday. For me, I got an extra big beer tonight to celebrate Darnell Nurse being a Edmonton Oiler for the next 8 years. I know a lot of people are upset about it, but I love it. I don't usually root for a defenseman. I'm more of a lazy left winger and centerman kind of guy, but I've always liked Darnell, and I'm excited that he's part of this club for the next 9 years.
Yeah, man, me too. It's funny that this is still going around to me, to be honest. I think it's just a little bit dumbfounding. Darnell Nurse is a goddamn good defenseman, people. Like, I don't understand why we have to knock this signing at all. I don't, whether it's 9 million, 9.5, 8.5. At the end of the day, I don't even care. The amount of money that we're bickering over is silly, and the fact that we sat and bickered over a contract with Adam Larson is potentially the reason we lost him. And Larson walked, and Nurse can't walk. We can barely replace Larson, and I'm not sure we can. We'll figure out different systems, and Tippett will figure out different favorites. And man, if Darnell walks at the end of this next upcoming season, it's irreplaceable. You can't lose Clefbaum and Larson and Nurse, and for that reason, Nurse holds all the cards. And you know what? Uh, good, good, good for Doc, because he deserves to hold all the cards, Durs. He's played his ass off as an Oiler. He's outplayed every single one of his contracts, and now we're gonna bicker at about 500,000. He played 1 million or 2 million under his contract for the last 4 years, 3 years, arguably.
Yeah, the biggest argument always is going to be, well, he's getting paid based off a heater of a shooting percentage. Um,
Bah.
yeah. You look around and you see what PK Subban's making, what Oliver Ekman Larson is making. If you want to feel better about Darnell, that's all you got to do is look at their contracts. You'll feel better, because I do.
Yeah, there's 15 defensemen in the NHL that get $8 million or more, and 5 of them are under 27, and we got one of them. Like, that right there, and Thomas Chabot's in that list. Would you rather have Nurse or Thomas Chabot?
Um, Nurse is more versatile. He can do more for you. He can
Exactly.
do more for you.
If you said Chabot, I was gonna say who would you take in a fight?
That's yeah, it's a no brainer on that one. And that's
So
part of it. I mean, people don't want to discount all of that kind of stuff, but it's still a factor. It's still something that happens in a game, and it's still something that I think you need in your repertoire as a team. And I think if you don't have that, you you can get into the playoffs, but I don't know if you survive them. So it takes a little bit of
yeah,
everything. And
I mean the whole league just spent free agency money on grit and intangibles, including the Oilers, and Nurse above all else is maybe the highest degree of grit and intangibles when it comes to our team, certainly on our decor, and we're paying free agent money for that all over the NHL while teams are looking for that skill, and we've got it right under our nose, and we groomed him ourselves, and he's got the leadership, he's got the passion, he's got all those things that you want to have along with being a good defenseman and a good offensive defenseman. And is he the best shutdown? No. Is he going to be as good as Adam Larson as a shutdown? No. He's not Adam Larson. he reminds me of Clefbaum that way, right? Clefbaum wasn't some shutdown guy either, but I'd take Clefbaum back. And for those guys, you mentioned this shooting percentage bullshit, dude. Get bent. Whoever, honestly, come at me, bro. It's ridiculous. I was listening to the Call It the Hockey podcast. Okay, I got a lot of respect for Bruce McCurdy because I think he's one of those guys that is a really excellent eye test and analytic guy. He's very logical when it comes to mixing those things up. And when I was listening to his podcast yesterday, I wrote a couple of things down. So Bruce McCurdy took a 3-year average, okay, 3 years, the last 3 years of Darnell Nurse in the NHL versus every other defenseman in the NHL. So 186 defensemen, 32 teams, right? 6 defensemen per team. You want to argue whether Darnell Nurse is a top pairing defenseman? You want to argue whether Darnell Nurse is a number 1 defenseman in this league? Bruce McCurdy says this. Over the last 3 years, on average, versus the rest of his peers, Darnell Nurse is first in games played in the entire NHL, which means he doesn't get hurt. Is that good? Fifth in ice time. First in even strength ice time. First. Fifth in goals. 7th in points. 4th in shots. Are these important stats? I'm not ripping analytics at you here. Goals, points, shots. 5th in individual scoring chances. 5th in individual expected goals. He's not even top 10. He's top 5 in a ton of the most important categories in the NHL versus all other defensemen. He's underplayed his contract for 4 years, and now we're gonna nickel and dime a $250,000 or $500,000. It's kind of ludicrous, man. He's led our team in goals scored by a defenseman for 4 years straight. Like, he's a number 1 defenseman, people.
Yeah, you almost like
pay him.
Yeah, you almost think like if analytics were a thing in the 80s, if they would have ran Paul Coffey out of town because of his defensive play. You know what I mean? Like it just becomes insanity. Like I see Darnell almost like a Scott Niedermayer in a bigger frame and more physical, not quite as gifted, but you know what I mean? Like he can go trot up and down the ice all night long, and he can lead the break and be the first guy back over and over and over again. He can cover up a guy like Tyson Barrie who makes a mistake at the blue line and gets beat for a breakaway, and Darnell's the first guy back to shut it down, or at least be in the conversation to be able to make it a harder play. Like it just, yeah. I like. Do some of these people even watch hockey? Or is it just if it's quantifiable on a math chart, then it counts. Like I don't get it. I don't know how you miss the oozing athleticism out of this guy. Like it defies logic to me. I don't get it. I've loved him since we drafted him. You talk often about him, going up against Connor in the OHL playoffs. He could skate with him and kind of be a deterrent. I mean, nobody shuts down Connor completely, but Darnell made it harder for Connor. Darnell makes it harder for a lot of people, just by the way he plays, and he's I'll knock on wood all day long, but he is healthy, he is durable, he's a survivor and a Clydesdale, and I'm glad that horse is on our team because he can do a lot of pulling of this team from the back end.
No doubt. I could go on about this. I really could. Like, you just said, does anybody watch hockey that's complaining about Darnell Nurse getting a contract like this? Well, I don't care if you've never watched hockey. Go and study all of the contracts out there, because this kid just signed an 8-year deal. The Oilers had to buy every one of his UFA years. That, this isn't a contract where half of them are RFA years and half of them are UFA years. Like, you're buying every one of those years as a UFA year. All of those years are within his peak talent age range. He's going to be 34 at the end of this, people. 34. This isn't Duncan Keith making $5.5 million at the age of 40.
Yeah.
This is 34 years old. Darnell Nurse will still be in his prime, you guys. Like he did this a year out. He didn't let it linger through the year.
Right.
He didn't let it linger through the dressing room.
And,
Can you imagine the distraction this would be if we were going on about whether Darnell Nurse is going to sign at the end of the year? That's not what this dressing room needs when we're in a win now mode. And he maybe he could have bet on himself again. Maybe he could have waited and played another. I know he's still signed for another year, but if he has another monster year and takes another step forward, is Darnell Nurse a $10 million defenseman?
Right.
Right.
What if he what if he does go out and win a Norris this year? What does that do to the?
Or in the next 5 years?
What does that?
Like, to that point, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What does that do to the price tag? Right. So people look at it the other way. Well, if his shooting percentage, goes into oblivion, then maybe you could get him for 7. But you know what? I don't think you could. I think guys like Seth Jones, Werenski, and all those guys that signed, in the last month, they set the market. Using a fishing term, but they set the market, and that's what it was. So, yeah.
Do you think that people sit in an arbitration hearing and go, "Yeah, you got this many points and this many"? But you had a career high in shooting percentage, so we're gonna give you $1 million less.
Yeah.
You, come on. Like, I get that he played a lot of his time in a 5-man unit with Connor and the higher level people, but at the same time, he had the defensive boat anchor of Tyson Barrie tied to his ass as well, because when he played with Bear, he was a significantly better defenseman.
And
his Corsi, his possession numbers, everything was better about Nurse when he played with Bear. But he still hauled Barrie around for 60% of the season, 70% of the season. So, you can be sure he's not a pure shutdown. Well, he did pretty damn good hauling Barrie around last year. And, all he does is get top 5 in the league, and everything he does, he's friends with Connor McDavid. He's everything we want. He's everything we want. He's the best defenseman we've had since Chris Pronger. Guys, pay number 1 defenseman their money. This is what we've always wanted.
It's like people refuse to admit to themselves, though, that he is a true number 1. And I don't know. I
ever argue that.
I don't know. And he doesn't.
He's 7th in Norris. You're the 7th best defenseman last year.
Right.
There's 32 teams in the league. There's 31 last year, which means there's 62 top pairing defensemen, and he got 7th.
And you got to think, like,
you're not a first.
If he was getting even a little bit more power play time, what would happen then? He didn't get a lot of PP time, right? The last 20 seconds of a power play, and you're expecting him to produce there, which he did. But
really good point.
If you give him that minute and 40 that Tyson Barrie's out there for, then what happens? Really
yeah, and you know what? Here, you want to say, okay, do you think Darnell Nurse this year was better than the year before?
Yeah, that's obvious.
Do you think Darnell Nurse over the last few years was better than the few years before that? Has he been improving every year for the last 4 years?
I think he's was the best he's ever been last season. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Great. And well said. Except 4 years ago, he led our team in points by defenseman, assists by defenseman, and goals by defenseman. 3 years ago, he led our team in points by defenseman, goals by defenseman, and assists by defenseman. And he's gotten better in the last 2 years again and again. You know what I mean, Durst? Like,
yeah.
He's not just a one-trick pony. He was not just a one good year. He's not a pandemic sample size defenseman. He's the 7th overall pick. He was a stud in junior.
Right.
He was the 2nd defenseman taken in that draft. Like, of course, he should be a top-pairing defenseman. That's exactly what he's been trending, what he's been drafted for his entire career. Yeah. We groomed him. We didn't screw him up. We didn't go Oilering like we did on everybody else. Like, people, just be happy we got him, man.
This will make you laugh, I think, too, but I see more outrage over the Nurse contract than I do the Duncan Keith acquisition, and to me, that's just hilarious. Like,
that's asinine.
Yeah, and the thing that I've said to you before, and I'll say it again, is I think the acquisition of Duncan Keith is really going to help Nurse go to another level. And I loved what I saw out of him last year, and I just think it's gonna go up. We're gonna see growth in him, and he's transitioning. I think now, I still think your early 20s, you're a boy, and he's gonna transition from that boy to that man, and he's gonna become a bitch to play against, and
Yeah,
it's only gonna get worse. Like he's gonna start to realize that I can enforce my will on people, and they're not gonna want to be anywhere around the crease if I'm back there. I
that's right.
really think that's gonna come, and maybe with the exit of Adam Larson, we're gonna see that go up to another level, and he'll have that sort of Chris Pronger nastiness in front of the net that I've been salivating and waiting to see, because I know he's strong enough and athletic enough and mean enough that he can have that,
Yeah.
and still I think not be walking to the penalty box 3 times a period.
Yep, absolutely. And people that want to shit on his analytics, go ahead. But one of the biggest analytics team in this league is the Toronto Maple Leafs, and their GM Kyle Dubas was the manager in Sault Ste. Marie when Darnell Nurse was there. And I read an article on the Athletic a couple days ago where Kyle Dubas has said that Darnell Nurse is like one of the best defensemen he's ever had on one of his clubs, and what he could do as a junior was something that he thought was special then, and the fact that he's just growing into that defenseman now in the NHL is exactly what Kyle Dubas ever expected. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I can't look at this from any angle and be disappointed. I just can't. And it's what we've always wanted, and for us to finally have a number one defenseman and him be the toughest guy in our team and an
Yeah,
emotional leader and have the blood, sweat, tears, and DNA and
yeah. You bring up
it's our love fest has gone on for 2 episodes on Darnell Nurse, buddy, but it's
you
it's it's maybe justified because it's like Twitter's toxic right now. It's crazy.
you bring up something that I'll touch on for a second. A lot of people think Cassian is the tough guy or whatever. Cassian has like a crazy to him. Darnell could go up against anybody in the league and he'll survive that fight. He may not win it, but he'll survive it. He's got that reach and he's strong, and he knows how to do it. Um, I saw it today. People. I got to clarify something. Darnell signing his extension has no bearing on Kyler Yamamoto. Just for the record, Yamamoto has been tendered a qualifying offer. He's still got time to deal with that, but Nurse's extension has no bearing on Kyler Yamamoto being or not being an Edmonton Oiler, so people can get that out of their head.
Oh, absolutely not. Is that something out there? I didn't even
Yeah,
see that. I mean,
yeah,
Kyler Yamamoto's been off. I mean, his agent's asking for 2 times 2. And Kyler Yamamoto was a very inconsistent player last year. Not to mention, he ended the season ice cold. So I don't know. I think if you get 1.5 million on 2 years or 3 million over 2 years at a 1.5 AVV or somewhere in between there, that's where Kyler's going to end up. It's how's that going to hurt Darnell Nurse? We're not going to lose Kyler Yamamoto because of that.
no,
In fact, if you got to start pointing fingers, then it can be because we blew a bunch of money on Cody Ceci and Duncan
yeah,
Keith. It's not because of Darnell Nurse, that's for sure.
no, no, has no bearing on anything. Um, and I thought Yamamoto 2 years ago was very solid, but had a bit of a regression season last year, and that happens. Some players come out of the gates, great, and then they kind of come back down to earth. Other teams start to study them, know them, and know tendencies and
Yeah.
how to defend and all that. So it's that cat and mouse game. Kyler has to work on some things over the summer, and come back and be healthy and have a good season. And I'm pretty sure he'll be an Edmonton Oilers starting in October. I just
Of course he will.
touch on,
And he'll be part of our top nine, right?
yeah.
No doubt about it.
I,
He's one of those key puck retrievers that we need. He's, in that top nine, we've got Hyman and Fogel and Yamo, and those are your go getters. And then we've got the snipers, and then we've got I like that mix now. But Kyler will be a part of it.
yeah. Other thing I guess that happened was Skinner signed a 2-year 2-way deal, um, so he can get sent up, sent down, whatever, and
Yep.
you know I guess last year he led the AHL in wins. He was second in goals against average and third in save percentage. So there is a kind of a promising goaltender there that hopefully will start to get some traction in the NHL and maybe take the reins and take us forward.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mind if we transition to goalies a little
I
bit?
think I just did.
Great segue, brother.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Well, I put out a Twitter poll today. I think there was last look 350 some odd respondents to which NHL goalie will not NHL goalie, which Edmonton Oilers goalie will start the most regular season games for the Oilers this year. So it was pretty overwhelming of 350 votes that I think Steve Smith was at 70 or 71%, and um, Stalock and Koskinen and other all occupied the rest. So, when I start to really boil this down and I start to really look at the goaltending, I I've got a couple of different theories, and I think I'm starting to lean more towards the one that we talked about over and over again about Holland just letting it ride. I'm not sure that it hasn't honestly really been a strategy, maybe from the beginning, which, he would never admit because you'd think the goaltending was supposed to be our number one thing that needed improvement. And I think that, he clearly went after Kemper. That was obviously pretty aggressive. There's lots of rumors out there that we had uh, Samarukov and the first overall pick as the trade, and clearly they went in the other direction. And I think what it came down to is they liked that prospect better than our prospect, and the first round picks they could have had were interchangeable. So um, that didn't matter, but ultimately, I start to see a little bit of history on Stalock. He hasn't played a lot in the last 2 years, but the last time he played, he was, out battling Dubnik for a number one spot in Minnesota. Um, he's been good every time he's been asked to play. Um, you look at the goaltending that's set up. And Koskinen having 1 year left, which made me go and look at the free agents for goalies next year. And there's actually a lot more goalies available next year's free agency than there was this past year. So I wonder if Holland looking at that went, okay, Kemper fell through. We tried. Who knows? Maybe they knocked on Rask's door. Maybe they tried something else. Who knows, right? But when it came down to trying to get Grubauer, or when it came down to get Corpusalo, or any of the other goalies that were talked about, I don't understand how Koskinen isn't that good a goalie already. Anyways, like you go and look at their career save percentages. Well, I think Koskinen's better than any of those other guys that he could have been traded for, like Corpusalo. So you're not really making an upgrade. So why would we give something away just to kind of stay even
Right.
now, unless it's because you can shed Koskinen's contract? But really, we're going to have to pay one of those guys two or three anyways. So yeah, you save a million, but now you're entering into a Corpusalo for 4 years or 5 years. Is Corpusalo the answer?
Right.
I don't know. I don't think Holland does either, right? So now you start to look at the other goalies that, now we've got Skinner re-signed. He was one of the better goalies in the AHL last year. He didn't have a super blue chip, I think, AHL or WHL career as far as save percentage. He's always been a good goalie and played for good teams. Um, but whether he's the answer, maybe, I don't know. Um, but maybe it's somebody like you said, where we bring them in partway through the season. Maybe it's at the trade deadline. I'm not sure about that. But we got some answers on like Konovalov. Is Konovalov good enough?
I
He's
Yeah, I don't really have an opinion on that. I haven't really watched the guy play, so I
so. Do you think Holland's going? All right, we got one more year to groom Skinner. We got one more year to groom Konovalov. Maybe Koskinen takes a step forward again. Maybe he doesn't. We have Stalock. If not, Koskinen can go to the minors, right? Like I wonder if, and then Koskinen comes off the books next year, and that's the $4 million raise Darnell Nurse gets,
Right.
right? So you just shift Koskinen's money over to Nurse, and maybe you go get a goalie in next year's free agent market, or maybe Stalock's proved himself, or maybe Skinner's taken that next step, or maybe Konovalov has, and we've got a whole new picture in front of us. So
Yeah.
the more I looked at it, I thought maybe Holland did an okay thing by not reaching too quickly for a goalie, just appease the public or appease the media or whoever. And the one thing I'll finish on is that I give Ken Holland one thing. He may I don't love what he's done this off season, but I give him credit for having a plan and sticking to it and knowing exactly what he wanted to do and not caring, what anybody thought. And if this is the right thing to do with the goaltending, then great. And like if Keith retires after 1 year and that money's freed up and Chicago has to take on all that cap hit for the retirement, that's that much more money that's freed up for a goalie next year. How do we know that Keith isn't retiring after 1 year and that money can go to a free agent goalie at 5.5? So I don't know. I just still think there is still time. So I have to probably say I'm sorry for a few episodes ago when I said we're absolutely positively not able to get another goalie because maybe there is something up his sleeve still. There's
um, I mean, the one thing that nobody can deny is there's definitely been a lot of change over the summer. He didn't do nothing. He did a lot of something.
oh
So,
yeah
we can sit here and we can evaluate, and people can have out their graphs and their charts and say that we're a worse team and all this. But at the end of the day, I mean, I have my opinion, but we're not going to know until the puck drops. October 5th or 6th or whenever the season gets going. Um, you know, about a month in, you'll kind of see you'll see some signs of what if what the moves that he's made are beneficial, or if we've taken a step backwards, or what. Other than that, I mean, it's a lot of guessing and hypotheticals and all of that. There's been a lot of change. It's a new team. He's definitely put his stamp on it. When it comes to goaltending, I still think that you it'll get easier to do something at the trade deadline if they feel like that's something they want to do. But I think we're starting with Mikko and Mike in October,
yeah
and that's kind of what I think now. To me, it was my biggest area of concern, but maybe it wasn't for them because they know that those two guys are good enough to get a team into the playoffs. If they had more depth against Winnipeg, maybe they can win that series. They've definitely added more forward depth, but the loss of Larson and the changes with Keith and Cece and Bear kind of going to Carolina. Caleb Jones, who wasn't playing every day, but he's off to Chicago. Um, those changes um, are going to be something different to watch. I'm not convinced we're going to be better or worse. I don't know yet. Have to see once they drop the puck. I still think Duncan Keith can play, and I think he'll be rejuvenated coming into Edmonton. With a new team and younger guys, kind of, and all of a sudden the swap of Caleb for him, we've become. I think somebody said, or maybe it was you, like the fifth oldest team in the league now. Um,
no, I didn't, but I know we're the third oldest team in the league. I heard actually.
okay, yeah. So, and it was all really with the swap of Keith for Caleb. Um,
Yeah,
we took on 20 years, so
exactly. That might have been low tide, maybe, or so. I think I heard that on 1260, but we must have been listening to that at the same time. Well, yeah, I know. Like, and I think, you said you're not sure if we'll be better, and I agree with you in the fact that we got to drop the puck to find out. But ultimately, I do think we're better. I stand by the fact that I think our defense has taken a step back. I do. I don't think Keith and CC are a Stanley Cup winning second pair. But that's okay. I think, even if we're the same on D or we've taken a step back on D, then we've improved so much on forward that I'm hoping, and the type of players we have with Fogle and Hyman and the motors that they have and the way that they go after pucks and puck retrieval, and they both kill penalties, and they're both big bodies, and they're both fast, and that type of thing really lends to a high possession game, right? The Oilers are built off the rush. I don't think there's any denying that the Oilers are built off the rush. Um, we get it deep off the rush a lot of the times, and then it goes right back the other way for a high danger chance or a high percentage chance the other way. And that's what worries me. Because when we're going back the other way on that high danger chance, unfortunately, it's going to be Keith or Barry or Bouchard or Russell closing that gap half the time, and that does scare me a little bit. But maybe Fogle, maybe Hyman, maybe a step forward from Playarvi, a step forward from Yamamoto. Man, wouldn't a resurgence of Zach Kassian be a nice little addition? And all of a sudden, we're cycling, and all of a sudden, we're winning corner battles, and all of a sudden, we're keeping the puck deep after our rushes. That's a different Oilers team. And I guess that's what I'm the most excited or anticipating to see how this mix of top nine now all comes together. I think that every player Holland acquired as a forward had tremendous versatility. And in fact, we could use that as a transition to Brendan Perlini signed. Um, that's another big body. It's another guy that plays two out of the three forward positions. It's another two-way contract, which means he can be sent down to the minors. He's a plug and play for Tippett because he's played 3 years in his system in Arizona. He knows his tendencies. So 25 years old. I think kills penalties just like Hyman kills penalties, just like Fogle kills penalties. I think what we've done up front is going to heavily trend us forward. I can reference an article unless you want to comment on that.
No, I just kind of chuckle too. Like, the Perlini signing is what, like just over league minimum or something like that, and people are
At 750.
Yeah, people are upset about that too. It's like, like holy fuck, like we got a reason to bitch over everything. Like, holy man, go outside and have a beer, and enjoy some sun, and it's the summer, relax. A guy signing for league minimum is not the end of the world for anybody. And if Tyler Benson is the player he needs to be come into camp, this Perlini signing shouldn't get in the way of something like that. So,
you know what? It should cause a little bit of a fire under
yeah,
his ass, if anything. It provides depth. It provides Tyler Benson some competition. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. And you're going to need two or three or four more of these guys, to be honest. This doesn't hurt your cap for anybody that's bitching about this, thinking this fills the cap.
yeah,
You have a 23-man roster. There's only so many people that count against your cap. And guys that have a two-way contract that can go down to the minors at any time.
right,
When you have a two-way contract, for those who don't know, that means that you can be sent to the minors without having to clear waivers.
yeah,
So you go up and down 25 times a week if that's what Ken Holland decides you're going to do.
right,
So ultimately, he is going to Bakersfield, people. And if he has some consistent time down in the AHL, he'll come back and try to plug into the bottom six somewhere, right? But there's a lot of competition. We're going to do this one or two more times on defense too. I wouldn't be surprised to see a Slater Cuckoo or something still come back at that type of price too.
yeah, yeah, and that would be good. Just a little bit more depth on the blue line there. Um, never hurts to have a couple insurance plans built in.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, you want to tee up our segment for the blowout today, or what do you want to go to next, buddy?
Yeah, I think I think it was Friday night. It might have been Saturday. I might be wrong, but in Edmonton there they did a little roast of Kevin Lowe. So I guess we could kind of do our own little roast of Kevin Lowe. I guess I'll start by saying the positive stuff on Lowe for me is
So what are we going with, like a favorite and a least favorite moment or something, or
yeah,
what do you
yeah, I
want?
think so.
All
I'll
right,
just say
let's not be all shitting on Kevin here.
I'll just say
We'll give him some
yeah, I'll
positives
just
too.
say like in '06 there was some masterful GM work that he did. You know, I think it started with Pronger and Pekka. Getting those guys to come to Edmonton and commit, um, and that kind of paved the way for everything that happened. I would say that '06 deadline day was probably the most successful deadline day maybe in NHL history, but definitely in the case of the Edmonton Oilers. I think we picked up Samsonov, Spacek, and Rolison, and maybe there's more there that I'm missing, but um, kind of transform.
Samsonov, yeah. Is that the same year? No, maybe not.
Yeah, no, I think it was Samsonov, Spacek, and Rolison, and there might be more, but definitely active deadline day, and it kind of paved the way for us to almost. And so that part, and I guess the other highlight I have of Kevin Lowe was the whole Brian Burke, I'll fight you in a barn. Um, that part cracks me up. And the two of them were serious, but it just never happened. But holy shit, that would have been pay-per-view for back in the day. And I guess
It's fun.
you're probably going to hit on this as your least favorite thing about Kevin Lowe too. But fierce competitor, great player. You wouldn't want to play against him. I remember him pulling his hair out on Boys on the Bus, after a loss and that kind of stuff. But my least favorite thing that Kevin Lowe has probably ever done was the Tier 2 fan speech. You definitely lost the fan base that day. I know his heart's in the right place and all that, and I know he bleeds for the Edmonton Oilers, but
Yeah.
talk about your all-time fuck-ups of a day, that would be the one. All right, your turn.
Oh, yeah. I mean, who doesn't love the barn fight? I mean, we still to this day talk. I think that story comes up every time there's somebody talked about it, giving an RFA offer sheet, right? Because this all comes up because of Dustin Penner, if you'll remember. Penner comes off that cup year and, was playing on a line with Perry and Getzlaff and, you know, doing his best Pat Maroon impression basically for the Oilers and, lugging around out there. And he got overpaid by Kevin Lowe. There's no doubt about it. I think Brian Burke knew that. But man, one of the funniest things was listening to Brian Burke do Spitting Chicklets after. It was about a year or two ago, and they brought that up actually. And I was laughing out loud for a good 5 minutes of that interview because Berkey's a good interview anyways. But he got asked about that, and like they said, what was your what was your biggest regret or your biggest fear in all of that? And he goes, well, that Kevin Lowe would take me up on the goddamn fight. And he said, well, do you think he would have? He said, you goddamn rights he would have. He's Kevin Lowe. Like, there's no way that guy's backing down from a fight. He would have absolutely fought me in a barn, and there you go. So yeah, I mean that's maybe initiated by Burke more than by Kevin Lowe, as opposed to Lowe's, name dragged into something. Tough to argue with the Pronger acquisition that got us on that '06 run. I think I just have to go back to Kevin Lowe, the player, if I'm gonna, give the props. When I still remember watching Kevin Lowe, and I mean him and Huddy and those guys were ruthless, ruthless. Like we go back to the Jason Smith days where Gator used to two-hand and spear anybody that came within 6 feet of him. Where do you think they learned that? Like him and Staios were the reincarnation of Huddy and Lowe. You didn't want to go within 10 feet of those guys, or there's a chance he'd kill you. And like it's that Kevin Lowe that I'll never be able to fully disrespect the GM Kevin Lowe, no matter how many times he shoved his foot in his mouth. My least favorite Kevin Lowe moment is season ticket holder event that I took a hat up to him and asked for it to be autographed, and he was about to walk away, and I said something not rude but maybe just a smidge condescending, and he turned around and grabbed my hat and autographed it and then took his thumb and smudged the autograph as much as he could when he handed it back to me. That's my least favorite Kevin Lowe moment. I still got that hat somewhere.
And
So
when I used to work for Carpet Superstore back in the start of my flooring career, he did the ads for us until the Oilers told him it was time to not do that anymore, to focus totally on hockey. So then Craig Simpson took it over. But yeah, I've heard some stories of how he can be too. Like yeah, he takes some things in life like he's taking somebody out in the corner. That's how he kind of reacts. So
I'd like to see a video of that roast, to be honest, because like you watch a guy like Noodles, or who I've seen, or even go as far as Pamela Anderson, as Charlie Sheen, or any of those roasts. They took it well.
yeah,
I I'm not the type of person to sit in front of a roast and have a bunch of people crucifying me. Like, criticism is my poison.
yeah,
I'd roll up in the corner and start crying.
right.
I'd see Kevin Lowe, like steam coming out of his ears. Like, all right, line up. I'm gonna barn fight the first 7 guys that are going up to the podium. Like, that'd be interesting.
Berkey was supposed to be a part of it, so. And,
Oh, no way.
and on the Brian Burke front, if you ever get the chance to listen to his audio book of his latest book, it's about a 7 or 8 hour venture. So if you're going on a long trip somewhere, turn that thing on and listen to that thing, and you won't shut it off the whole time. It's great. He is he's a great storyteller, and he's been through some stuff, and I really really enjoyed that. So there's a plug for Burke.
Right on.
You could send us a $3.85 as payment.
That's the going rate these days. Um, we finished off last podcast with me saying that I just wouldn't mind touching on the schedule a little bit. I think it's worth noting, there's a bunch of anomalies in the schedule this year that, I'm not going to go back and talk again about how I thought, Mike Smith had a pretty easy year last year as far as, sleeping in his own bed and the schedule and taxi goalies, and you and Chad Graham decided to attack me and make fun of my arguments when I was off the air, and I was crying because you guys were mean to me, but ultimately I was right.
My condolences.
So no, I think this year's going to be tough. I think it's going to be at least twice as hard. And the only hard part about last year was the condensed schedule. The travel was easy, the hotels were easy, a lot of it was as easy as it's ever going to be. This upcoming season is unique for the Oilers in particular for a couple of different reasons, or for one reason, and then for the NHL, something particular for another reason. And so the Edmonton particularity is the fact that we're hosting the IIHF World Junior Championships over Christmas, right? So, our arena's going to be busy and obviously not used by the Oilers. And then as far as the league goes, generally in Olympic years, they don't have an all-star game. But I think in all of the NHL's glory and wanting to, put itself before the Olympics because of, its uncertainty or whatever, I think Gary Bettman was like, well, screw it. We can make money on an all-star game, so that's what we're doing. I don't care. So they're having an all-star game this year. So the all-star game falls on the 3rd, 4th, 5th of February, but then February 7th to the 22nd is the Olympic break. So when you look at it month after month after month, there's November is got a 7 games in 14 days stretch. So that's a game every second night for 2 straight weeks in November. In December, because our barn is empty, speaking of barns, we have them going on a 18-day road trip. There's an 18-day gap in between home games. They play 8 games in 12 nights on that road trip. They play that over Christmas and New Year's. So, Mike Smith's not sleeping at home. He's, maybe not home for Christmas. He's, maybe not home for New Year's. He's not taking his kids to hockey practice. December goes through January, February. We've got this All-Star. So now all of a sudden the Oilers only play 4 games in February because of this long extended break. So now you've got push, long break, push, because
March comes, they play 8 games in 14 days in March, and then to end the season, they play 8 games in 16 nights to end the season in April. So you've brought it up several times that you've been worried, and I know Chad told you that there's nothing to worry about because these guys are elite athletes. But you know what? All elite athletes still get hurt, and the fact of the matter is, we still have goalies in their late 30s right now, and goalies in their late 30s can tweak hamstrings or groins or what have you. And when you're playing that many games and that many nights over and over and over and over and over again, month after month, you're taking 2 weeks where you barely play. Then you're going 2 weeks where you play every second night, and then 2 weeks where you barely play, and then over and then back and forth. I think there's we have 2 injury-plagued goalies already. I think that Stalock's going to have a very good chance to probably play a good chunk of games in the first 20 to 30 games of the year. And I think if Stalock can take off with that and do well with it, what's stopping him and Smith from being the tandem for the rest of the year and Koski going down to the minors or something?
Right.
You know what I mean? I think that just has to play out a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
So the schedule is interesting. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think we need that depth on D for the exact same reasons we talked about bringing back a Cuckoo. We can't have Russell as our number 6. So I think that schedule almost dictates some certain, you talk about the Perlini depth, you talk about some of those things. I think, there might be a lot more injuries than there was last year, just because of the fact that they only did it over 56 games last year. They're going to have a condensed schedule, but have to do it over 5 months and 82 games. So any thoughts on that being more of a particular danger to our goalies or our team, or how you think it'll affect the team, especially ending 8-16 to end the season? Man, you better be on a hot streak.
Well, you'd like to be in a playoff position before you get into that.
Yeah, it's going to be a close division.
If you're not,
I hope you're right.
If you're not, that can be a little bit of a nail biter coming down the stretch. The World Juniors almost feels like we used to always have that 10-day road trip in November because of the CFR or whatever coming through Edmonton, right? So it's kind of like that now. They don't have to break for a rodeo, but they have to break for the World Juniors. So kind of the same,
that's right.
Same sort of thing, but 10-day road trips are not easy, right? So I don't know. I think there was parts of last season where you're playing a game almost every other night for a long stretch, but I did like kind of the almost like the baseball home series kind of feel to it. You play 3 or 4 at home before you go on the road, and those things. And we never really saw like home and home series before. We got a little bit of that last year where you play Calgary a few times and then at home, and then you're going to their barn playing them a few times, and I kind of like that. I did sort of get a little bit bored and stale with the season probably 2.5, 3 months in, and then kind of got used to it and was fine with it. I wouldn't mind seeing when you go to a California road trip to play a couple of times against each team when you go through there and when they come up to us. I don't mind that. I think it builds like animosity and makes it better, but they try to spread it out throughout the season, so you can, if you're on holidays or something, you can see Connor McDavid at least once a year or so, if you're in Anaheim or whatever. So
exactly.
So I mean the schedule is what it is, and it never really favors us because we're the most northernly team in the NHL. So
yeah. It's always a long road trip, I guess.
Yeah. It's just one more thing to go through. I think adding Seattle into the mix probably lightens the travel a little bit because it's just not quite as far to one more team that's not that far to go to. So
couple less trips to California as a result, probably, right?
Yeah.
Any messages in the board or anything that we want to respond to there?
Yeah, no, I think chats have been pretty quiet today, so um, I don't know. We can ice the puck, and you can give us your last words, and we can shut her down for the night.
Okay, just dump it in here and
Yeah.
call it a dump and chase night. And um, yeah, man, I enjoy talking to you as always. I think we're getting here to a point where it's the heart of summer, and uh, the hockey news is going to dwindle down a little bit. So we'll try to keep bringing you new and creative ways to keep you listening. There's some guests planned. I know we've been flirting that for a little bit. We probably would have actually done that by now. I think Durst would probably nod his head in agreement, except for our transition over to the Heavy Hockey Network to be working with Michael Bear and Oilers Live and Eric Friesen with 99 Forever. And that transition is going to happen as of our next episode. So this upcoming week on Thursday, we'll be coming at you a little bit differently. We'll give you details before it gets there, but part of having to do that, we held off on having guests just because we wanted to make sure that we were on the new platform and doing everything there. So throughout the summer, we're still going to have some fun and lots of things to bring to you. I don't know if you want to touch on anything about where we're going to be found next week, Durs, or if we'll just maybe put it out there before Thursday hits so people know where to find us. But that's about all I got, man. I just love chatting hockey with you. And
Well, I think in terms of that, things are going to stay pretty much the same. You'll be able to find us on YouTube and Twitter, but also um, I think we will be streaming through kind of the Heavy Hockey Network or Oilers Live channel, and also to Oilers Live YouTube channel as well as our own. I believe that is kind of the plan, kind of going forward. We might lose the mountains in the background and have kind of just a more orange and blue Oilers centric background, but still be called Straight Off the Pipe, and still be me and you. And looking forward to some guests. I know Mr. Chris Dingman is kind of waiting for me to bring him in.
Dinger!
And I talked to him. I think it might have been 2 years ago actually. I was in Grand Cache in a hotel room there with the mountains in the background, and Michael was on, and we talked to Chris, and he's got a lot of good stories, and he's a lot of fun, and
Awesome.
yeah. So
I'm going to try and talk him into joining our podcast. I think Dinger, Dash, and Durs has a good ring to it.
Triple D, yeah. All right.
So,
You can check us out next Thursday on Twitter and YouTube for sure. I'm not sure if my Facebook will die or not, but 9 o'clock next Thursday, we're all things being equal, we'll be back. So I'll end it.
got her.
I'll end her like I always do. Keep your sticks on the ice. Keep reaching for the stars, and go Oilers, go. Have a good night, everybody.